On today's show, the Cavs dropped preseason game number 3 to the Celtics. We're going to talk about what we saw in that game that could be notable for the Cavs. Plus, should we be worried about potential bench lineups and how they look offensively for Cleveland? We'll talk about all that and so much more on today's edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name is Danny Cunningham, and I cover the Cavaliers over at my Substack, The Inside Shot. And I just want to say thank you to you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. Please make sure to do us a favor. Give us a nice rating, leave us a nice review, and make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube as well, please hit that thumbs up button for us, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode brought to you by FanDuel, because right now new FanDuel customers can bet just $5. And if your first $5 bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Head to FanDuel.com to get started today. The Cleveland Cavaliers lost preseason game number 3 to the Boston Celtics, 138-107 on Sunday. And this one there are takeaways. There are things that I want to talk about. But if you didn't watch the game, or let's say you didn't even look at a box score and you're just tuning into Locked On Cavs because you want to know what happened, and you hear me immediately say they lost by 31 points to Boston, you might think, well, that's a little bit alarming. And on the surface, I could see how that would be. But it is important to note as we start talking about this game, none of the Cavs, when they're fully healthy, top 8 players played in this game. So the top 8, as I would define it, is Donovan Mitchell, and this is in no order, but Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, Jarrett Allen, DeAndre Hunter, Lonzo Ball, Sam Merrill, and Max Strus. That's the top 8. None of those guys played. So it's not as if the Cavs trotted out their starting 5 or the Cavs really went after this one and tried to find a way to get a win in the preseason. They essentially did the opposite of that. So I don't think a 31-point loss to Boston, by the way, who did play their starters. Like the Celtics played Jaylen Brown. They played Peyton Pritchard. Derek White played. They had basically their normal, I would imagine what will be their normal rotation when the season does arrive next week. So I just think that is an important thing to denote as we start talking here. But this does give us an opportunity to talk about the guys that did play. So the starting 5 on Sunday was Tyrese Proctor, Craig Porter Jr., Jaylon Tyson, Larry Nance Jr., and Dean Wade. That was the starting 5. Didn't necessarily look very good. I don't think that is a super big cause for concern. Again, considering it was going against the starting 5 for the Celtics, that will probably be their starting 5 next week for opening night. And that is also a 5-man group for the Cavs that is never going to be playing meaningful minutes together. All 5 of those guys, at least 4 of them. Tyrese Proctor, I don't know. And I want to talk a little bit about him in just a second because I was not super impressed with him tonight. But 4 of those guys, and Porter Jr., Tyson, Wade, and Nance, are all going to play meaningful minutes for the Cavs at some point this year. I would imagine most of them at the start of this season. Like I would think that those 4 are all going to be in the opening night rotation for Cleveland. So with that in mind, it's not concerning that they didn't play well together because they're not going to be in there together for the most part. And I just think that is an important thing to bring up at the start here. But I wanted to begin with Jaylon Tyson because of that group, he's kind of the swing player for me. Like, I think we know what to expect out of Larry Nance Jr., and we know what his role is going to be as that third big man. And you know, I think that if he's making shots, he's going to be an elite third big. If he's not making shots, he's going to be a serviceable third big. And in the preseason so far, he's not really made shots, but he's still filled up the box score in other ways, which I think is a really good thing for the Cavs. And, you know, I do think that he will serve as, in some ways, like I kind of think of him as the big man Max Strus. Now, their skill sets are obviously not exactly the same, but Kenny Atkinson has referred to Max Strus as that connector over and over and over again. I just think Larry Nance Jr. is like the big man version of that. But to Jaylon Tyson, because he's the one that I do think is going to have a role on this team at the start of the year. And I don't know that he's going to have a role on this team at the end of this year when the Cavs are fully healthy. Like I do think with Max Strus out, with Darius Garland out, there is space for him in the rotation. I would be, quite frankly, pretty surprised if he's not in the rotation at the start of the year because of who the Cavs are missing. And they're just a little bit thin on the wing when Max is not available. And they're a little bit thin in terms of playmaking when Darius Garland's not available. And I do think that Jaylon Tyson can do both of those things. Now, the thing with Tyson that has concerned me a little bit is the shooting, because I think he does all the other stuff relatively well, at least at like replacement level in the NBA. I think that he's a good rebounder. I think that he's a good playmaker. I think that he's a solid defender. I think he plays with a very high motor, all things that the Cavs very much need. But the shooting is the thing that I look at and just say, man, he has to hit shots if he's going to be on the floor. And he was 2 of 6 from beyond the arc in this game on Sunday against the Celtics, which in a vacuum on the surface is fine. I just kind of look at the first 2 games as maybe those mean a little bit more in terms of his shooting numbers, because he was, I believe, 1 of 7 from beyond the arc in those games, or one of 9 beyond the arc in those first 2 games. I know he was 0 of 5, and I believe he was 1 of 4, 1 of 3 in the second one. And those are games in which he's playing in lineups that are going to be closer to what he's playing with in the regular season. Like the role that he had on Sunday had the basketball in his hands a little bit more. It wasn't quite the same role that we saw him in during the summer league when he did look very impressive, but it is, I think, closer to that than the role we're going to see him in a week from Wednesday in New York against the Knicks on opening night. So I just look at that and say, okay, well, if he is not able to consistently knock down catch and shoot jumpers, and I don't think anyone's going to ask him to be Ray Allen, right? No one's expecting him to go out there and shoot 43% from 3, but I think he needs to shoot 37, 38% in order to be a viable contributor at this part of the season, considering the guys that he's going to be on the floor with, right? He's not going to have the basketball in his hands a ton. Now, I almost do wonder if that might be a better way to deploy him, because he very clearly is more comfortable in that way. He is more comfortable having the basketball in his hands, being able to create a little bit, being able to create for others, for himself, do those types of things where he can be sort of a bigger guard with the ball in his hands, as opposed to an average size wing. So that is one of the things that I wonder if the Cavs would like to see him do that, just because they know he's comfortable. And that might be the best way to get the most out of him, right? Like you want guys to be in positions where they are comfortable. You want to put them in positions to be successful, is the best way to put it. And I don't know if asking Jaylon Tyson to knock down catch and shoot shots are, putting him in position to be successful. And I looked this up on Synergy, and in the first 2 games, he was 0 of 4 on unguarded catch and shoot threes. And that's just like, if he's on the floor, let's say he's in a lineup that has maybe Donovan Mitchell and Larry Nance Jr., Jared Allen is out there, because I do think those 2 are going to play together. And then let's say Sam Merrill, Jaylon Tyson's not going to be defended very heavily on the wing. He's going to be a guy that has to make other teams pay. He's going to have to be a guy that can provide some space for the Cavs when he's on the floor. And if he's not making those shots consistently, and again, no one's saying that he needs to make all of them, because that's not fair. But I do think he needs to be a better shooter than what he's shown in preseason so far. So if there's one thing that would concern me with him, that's the thing. Because everything else, I think he does relatively well. I think he does a lot of the things that you really want somebody that's in that position to be able to do. It's just this one thing that I think is super, super important, and it's putting the ball in the basket, because that's how games are won and lost. So I think that is the one thing that I look and just say, if he can shoot, Jaylon Tyson's going to be really good for this team. But if he can't shoot, I don't know that there is room for him in a rotation that also has Max Strus, that has DeAndre Hunter, when Darius Garland gets back. Like, I just don't know that he's not going to be the odd man out if the shooting does not get better from where it's been so far. But to be fair here, the Cavs have played 3 preseason games. This is an extremely small sample in games that the outcome doesn't matter. If we're being honest, it does not matter that the Cavs lost this game on Sunday. It does not matter that the Cavs have not beaten an NBA team in a preseason game for 3 whole years now, because that is a true statistic. Those things don't matter. What matters is that he can do it in the regular season, and he's going to get an opportunity to do it in the regular season. And it is important that he does handle that opportunity well. We'll see when it gets here. But so far, like, if I had to pick one thing that I'm just a little bit concerned about as far as it goes with Jaylon Tyson potentially being a rotation player for the Cavs, That's just the thing that I look at and say, yeah, that needs to get better. That needs to improve if he's going to stick, if he's going to be a real contributor for this team. Now, there are a couple of other guys that I do expect to be contributors for this team. I want to talk about Dean Wade a little bit. I don't know that I expect Tyrese Proctor to be a contributor, but I want to talk about the night he had on Sunday too. So we'll do that next right here on Locked On Cavs. But first, today's show is brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. It's their most advanced equipment yet, designed to give you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or cross-training with your favorite instructors. This is training reimagined. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with tools that help you plan, stay motivated, and reach peak performance. The Peloton IQ system offers real-time strength coaching. It actually checks your reps, suggests the right weights, and corrects your form, making every rep safer and smarter. Plus, the swivel screen is a game changer because you can go from running on the Tread Plus to strength training without missing a beat. Plus, the personalized class recommendations keep you engaged and get you the workouts tailored to your vibe and energy level each week. So let yourself run, lift, flex, and push forward. Explore the new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus today at onepeloton.com. That is ONE Peloton.com. Thank you again for making today's edition of Locked On Cavs your first listen wherever you get your podcasts. And I do want to talk a little bit about Tyrese Proctor because I thought that this was a big opportunity for him. And I did think in the first couple of preseason games that he looked the part. Like he looked like somebody that, okay, he might be ready to contribute to the team, despite the fact that he's a number 49 overall pick. And that is not something that you expect. You don't expect somebody picked where he was picked to immediately be a contributor, even if he was somebody that like it was not. He wasn't available at number 49 by accident, as I've reported on this podcast before. Like he was there because he told teams to not draft him. That is why he was available to the Cavs at 49, because he wanted to be on a standard contract, and that is exactly what he's on in Cleveland. But when you come into a 64-win team, you don't expect that guy to be a contributor, just like it does not happen. So anything the Cavs get from Tyrese Proctor this year, I think, is very clearly a bonus. You just would not expect meaningful contributions. And against the Celtics on Sunday, I thought this was a big opportunity for him because, as I mentioned in the open, going against Boston's regulars, right? Like, you know, he's finding himself matched up on Jaylen Brown. That's a big step up from anything he saw in college. It's a big step up from anything he saw in Summer League. That's a big step up from anything he saw in the Chicago Bulls in the first two preseason games. And he finished with 12 points. He had 4 assists, but 2 of 9 on threes. And I hate to be so simple with things because it's such a make or miss league. And like, that is such a cliche that I don't love to use here. But I do think if he can shoot like lights out, there's a role for him this year. But if not, I just think that there are other things that he needs to improve upon, that part of this year being spent in the G League would probably serve him better in the long run if he's not making shots. I think his shot looks good. And it's funny to me to see him go 2 of 9 because I sit there sitting on my couch watching this game, and every time the ball leaves Tyrese Proctor's hands, I'm like, that looks good. Like that's going in. And for him to miss 7 of 9 was a little startling, I guess, if you will. Like that's just the one thing I just don't expect that to happen given how smooth his stroke looks. And really that's something I've felt since watching him in person for the first time in Summer League. Like he just has such clean shooting mechanics, if you will, that whenever he misses a shot, it comes off as a surprise. But I do think he just needs to be a little bit better in that area. I know he had a really good first game, but this was, I thought, a bigger opportunity. I don't want to sit here and say, oh, you know, he failed, he's never going to get another chance again. It was a bit of a rough night for him. But if he can shoot, I could see a role for him this year. If he has nights like this, I just think he's going to end up spending more nights in the G League with the Charge because he does have a lot of things he can work on. And I do think the outline of a good like third guard is very much there with Tyrese Proctor. I think he really could be somebody that has a legitimate NBA future, and that pick for the Cavs could look like a humongous win. Like that would be, if he is ever a meaningful contributor to a playoff basketball team after being selected 49th overall, that's a huge win. And I've talked about this a bunch in terms of team building in today's NBA climate with the apron system and stuff like that, because you do have to, when you are as expensive as the Cavs are, you have to find ways to win on the margins. You have to hit on your draft picks, whether they're first round, early second round. I mean, when you get later into the second round, it is, I mean, the end of the first round is a crapshoot. If you find like a 10th guy in the second round, it's a huge win. But you have to find somebody there. You have to find an undrafted guy, which the Cavs have done. Like Craig Porter Jr. working out for them would be a really big deal. Dean Wade, maybe not now because he's on more of a legitimate NBA contract. Sam Merrill, same thing, but now he's on that legitimate NBA contract. They need to find ways to replenish that type of like salary slot on their roster with a guy that can give you meaningful minutes. And Tyrese Proctor could be that. I still like a lot what I've seen, just maybe wasn't his night on Sunday night against the Celtics. Dean Wade is the other guy I wanted to talk about from this because he was, I don't know, maybe the top guy in the rotation that played. Like maybe he's the ninth guy, maybe Larry Nance Jr. is the ninth guy. I don't know that it matters. But he's at least near the top of guys on the roster that played tonight. And my biggest gripe with Dean is that he's not aggressive enough offensively. He is somebody that if he's going to be out there, if he's going to be somebody that defenses are going to respect, he needs to shoot the basketball more. That has been a problem of his, that I think he can be a little gun shy at times. I think he can be a little too hell-bent, if you will, on making sure that he's making the right play instead of just making a play. And maybe it's not right all the time. I think at times he's looked a little too concerned about, wanting to be overly unselfish, which isn't a good thing. That's why I'm going to say I love that he was 0-7 from 3 on Sunday. I love that in 24 minutes, Dean Wade took 7 shots. I think 7 shots from 3. He took 8 on the night. Actually, his only make was on a cut, which is something I want to talk about too. But I love that Dean Wade took 7 threes tonight because he has to be aggressive, and he is too good of a shooter to like have this type of night consistently. He's somebody that will be around 37-38% from beyond the arc. Like he's just a very good shooter, especially with the shot diet that he will get. But he needs to be as aggressive shooting the basketball when the regular season arrives as he was on Sunday night. I don't care that he missed 7 threes. That does not matter because, like I said, the result of this game does not matter. The Cavs losing by 31 to the Celtics means nothing. We are going to forget about this game in a week. I promise. But the fact that Dean Wade took 7 threes, to me, might have been the most positive thing to come out of this game because the Cavs need him to be aggressive. They need him to shoot. They need him to do those things if he's going to be defended. Because if you go back and watch times from last year, teams wouldn't treat him the way that they would treat Isaac Okoro, where teams are just not going to defend Isaac. Teams will defend Dean Wade, but they can help off him a little bit more than they should be able to help off of a shooter of his caliber. They can do that because Dean has not always been the most decisive guy. And I would imagine on opposing scouting reports, Dean is somebody that other teams term as a soft closeout guy that you don't need to get out to in a hurry. Like there are certainly guys that you have to run hard to get after on the closeout because you know they're going to let it fly and you know they're a good shooter. And Dean is that caliber shooter that deserves that type of respect, but he's not that caliber of a decision maker. He doesn't process that quick enough. And that is, I think, why teams don't have to get out to him as quick as they should have to get out to him. And that at times can lead to the Cavs offense slowing down because if he's not making the right decision, or even to put it a different way, if he's not making the wrong decision to shoot quickly, that can hurt the Cavs offensively. There are some times where Dean could take bad shots that are actually good for the Cavs offense, but he just does not take those bad shots. And in turn, trying to make the right play can actually kind of hurt the Cavs offense. So I love that he took 7 threes. I think that is the best thing for the Cavs to come out of this game. And the other thing that Dean did on Sunday night, and it was actually on his one made field goal, is he cut to the basket. That to me is something I would like to see more of from Dean Wade, because Dean is somebody that is 6'9" and he is a decent sized body. He should be a good finisher in theory. Like, is he the most athletic guy on the team? No, but I think that he could do more damage around the basket than he could. I think he could certainly get to the free throw line more than he could, because he averages fewer than one free throw attempt per game. But last year, when he was used as a cutter, which if you remember back to the Cavs offense last year, a lot of cutting. Dean Wade averaged 1.46 points per possession on cuts last year, which was very good. 81st percentile across the league, according to Synergy. But he was 31st in frequency of cuts. That is an area where he can improve. And the cut he had tonight was on a Craig Porter Jr. ran a pick and roll. I believe it was with Larry Nance Jr., Thomas Bryant, setting the screen. And then Dean cut from the right wing to the basket. And CPJ found him. Dean went up, put the ball in, got fouled, made the free throws. Like, yes, more of that, because Dean is somebody that should be able to take advantage of his size in that way. I think he can be more than just a stationary shooter in the corner or on the wing. And I think this is a good way to not only give the Cavs another option offensively, but also make the way defenses look at Dean Wade change just a little bit. And I think that could ultimately be a really good thing, especially when Darius Garland comes back. I think that is when it could really pay off. Now, Darius Garland's not going to be around to start the season. Max Strus not going to be around to start the season. Lineups are going to look a little funky. Should we have any worry about what the Cavs bench units look like on offense? We'll talk about that next, right here on Locked On Cavs. But first, today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, FanDuel has what I think is one of the best promotions going on right now. FanDuel has an offer that you don't want to miss, because right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. All you got to do, $5, pick a winner, right? I gave you one this week. I don't want to brag. I'm not happy about it, but I gave you one this week because I told you the Browns getting 4.5 points is what that game against the Steelers opened at on FanDuel. The Browns getting 4.5 points only was absurd. Now, I know that number moved ultimately to 6. I actually went on FanDuel on Sunday. Again, I don't love saying this. I went on FanDuel on Sunday and I took the Browns, I took the Steelers minus 9.5, because I just thought there's no way the Browns win this game. There's no way the Browns keep this close. And what do you know? The Browns did not win that game. The Browns did not keep this close. The Browns look like a dumpster fire right now. And you can make money on the Browns being a dumpster fire on FanDuel, because that's what I did on Sunday. And maybe you can do that next Sunday with the Browns, because they will be taking on the Miami Dolphins. And I believe that they have opened up as a very slight favorite, which is something that I would absolutely in no way, shape, or form ever have interest in betting on right now, because the Browns as a favorite just seems like a absolute disaster. The thing I do like, however, the Buffalo Bills, Monday Night Football, 3.5 point favorites over the Atlanta Falcons. I don't think Atlanta's for real. I don't. I think Buffalo is. I like Buffalo to go on the road in Atlanta and win that game by a touchdown. So I'm going to roll Bills minus 3.5 on FanDuel. You can do the same. And if it's your first $5 bet, and if it hits, $300 in bonus bets are yours. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if you win, you unlock $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Again, FanDuel.com, FanDuel.com today. Today's show is also brought to you by Monarch Money. Did you know most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, investments, other things? I don't know where your money's tied up, but you might not know where your money is tied up. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. So if you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you, because you can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel like you're in control of your money without ever having to touch a spreadsheet. So don't let this financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNBA, that is LOCKEDON NBA, at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. Again, 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com just by using code Locked On NBA. Again, LOCKEDON NBA. Locked On NBA is the code at monarchmoney.com for half off your first year. Thank you again for making today's edition of Locked on Cavs your first watch on YouTube. If you are watching along, do us a favor, hit the thumbs up button for us, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked on Cavs content. And I did put out the ask on Twitter if anyone had any mailbag questions, thinking I might have a couple of minutes today to get to one or two. And Fungible1944 on Twitter essentially asked the question, should there be concern about the bench unit offense this year? And I understand why this question is out there for a couple of different reasons. One, Ty Jerome no longer a member of the Cavs, although, 12 months ago, we were not anticipating Ty Jerome having this huge impact on the Cavs offense in a way that he certainly did. But also, I don't think Lonzo Ball has looked great in the 2 preseason games that he's played. So I do think it's a very fair question to ask, and I don't think there should be reason to be concerned. And the thing I keep coming back to as to why I don't think there should be any concern here is I think these rotations are going to look different than they did last year. And Kenny Atkinson gave us a hint in the preseason game in Chicago when Donovan Mitchell and Jared Allen subbed out together in the first quarter. Because if you think back to last year, Donovan Mitchell always subbed out with Evan Mobley in the first quarter. Those two were basically tied at the hip in terms of their rotations. They played the second most minutes of any pairing on the Cavs, only behind Darius Garland and Jared Allen, which played somewhere between 150 and 200 more minutes than those two did. But they had 13 more games together because Donovan and Evan played in 62 games together, while Jarrett and Darius played in 75 games together. So that was the lineup that played. That was a 2-man pairing, I should say, that played the most minutes per game together. They averaged over 27 minutes a game on the floor together. They weren't obviously always on the floor together, but most of the time they were. I don't think that's going to be the case this year. I think that Donovan is going to be tied with Jarrett for a little bit, at least until Darius gets back. Now, when Darius Garland gets back, maybe things go back to the way they were. Maybe they stay the same. I'm not sure. That's a different discussion for a different day when we know when Darius is going to be back. But because Donovan's going to leave the floor with Jarrett, Evan Mobley is going to be such a focal point of the second unit. And I just think he's going to be too good offensively for this group to just sit there and be below average. And I expect Lonzo Ball to be with him, maybe not all of the time that Donovan's not on the floor, but a good chunk of the time Donovan's not on the floor. I do think Lonzo Ball will be there to help. I think DeAndre Hunter going to be in that unit as well. And we have seen a very good start from Hunter so far in preseason. So I just don't think it's that big of a concern because I do think that those guys will be able to figure out. And if nothing else, so often when the Cavs bench unit is on the floor this year with Evan Mobley in it, the Cavs are still against almost any team going to be able to say, yeah, well, we still have the best player on the floor. Like Evan Mobley might be the best player on the floor anyways. And if he's in units with bench players going against bench units from other teams, well, it's hard for me to imagine teams are going to have players on the floor that are better than Evan Mobley. That doesn't mean he's going to be the best player every single night, but more often than not, he should be. And if that is the cornerstone of your bench unit, I think you're going to feel really, really good about where you're at. Now, Lonzo needs to play better. I think he's just kind of still getting acclimated to this team, to being, playing in this offensive system. I think it will look really good when he gets there. And I think right now what we're seeing is an adjustment period. Like this stuff takes time. And I think that last year, the Cavs were able to get off to such a good start because they had roster continuity, right? Like the roster was essentially the same exact thing it was the year before. So I think that played a big part of them getting off to a good start. This year, they don't quite have the same continuity. I don't expect there to be huge growing pains, but if there are growing pains for the first couple of weeks of the season, I don't think that's any reason to be overly concerned about maybe that unit is not great at that time. I just don't think it'll be that big of a deal for the Cavs because ultimately they're going to say, we have Evan Mobley on the floor and the other team doesn't. And that is one of the best things that you can say, I think, offensively, because he's going to have such a big year for the Cavs. But that's going to do it for today's edition of Locked on Cavs. Thank you for making this show your first listen today. And thank you if you do make it your first listen every single day. Like I said earlier, you can find us anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. And we are on YouTube as well. So if you're watching along, do us a favor, hit the thumbs up button for us, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked on Cavs content. I'll be back tomorrow talking more about the Cleveland Cavaliers.